Welcome back, community. In today's episode, we're talking about safety planning for undocumented and mixed status families. What happens if a loved one is detained? What legal steps can families take to protect their children and assets? We are also covering a checklist of documents that are needed in case of a deportation and whether certain forms need to be notarized. We're honored to be guided by an immigration attorney, Pedro Chavez. Pedro is a California-based immigration lawyer with over 5 years of experience in refugee, asylum, and border issues. He has helped hundreds of asylum seekers in the U.S. detention facilities, immigration courts, and at the U.S.-Mexico border. Pedro is deeply committed to helping all people find legal pathways to safety. Let's welcome our guest.
Hi, Adriana. Thanks for having me on this really cool podcast that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I found you through TikTok. One of your lives came up, or actually it was one of your videos. It was very informative and I was just very appreciative of the information and I felt the need to reach out to you. So I'm really grateful for your time here.
No, I mean, I've been enjoying making them on TikTok. People have been liking them. It's very like it's a short thing for me to do. Just basically pull out my phone and try to educate people on like what people really need to know about like this very, very difficult time that we live in. So I've been having fun doing it.
You specialize in different things or you have a lot of experience under immigration. With this segment, we are going to be focused on particular areas. So, with that, we have some questions from the community, and it's in regards to mixed status families. Folks are wondering what safety planning looks like for families who are undocumented or mixed status.
Every case is going to be distinct. So when you say mixed status families, I would look at so at the very, very minimum, I would advise just at least get one or two consultations with different immigration lawyers that only do immigration law or primarily immigration law, specifically ones that focus on removal defense or deportation defense. Just because every single case is going to be very, very different, and the strategies that you implement to protect your family will be very, very different depending on how your mixed status are. So like one example would be like the father is completely undocumented and the children are U.S. citizens, which is very, very common. It's usually like a father came in a certain way, has no status, and then just had a few children that are now U.S. citizens. That person has different options. See if you can have like a packet ready with the information of those children. Those U.S. citizen children are a potential defense for you because even if they're minors, even if they can petition you, they're defense for you in terms of prosecutorial discretion. So just having U.S. citizen children is a positive factor that ICE attorneys, ICE officers will look at in determining whether they want to do you a favor, in determining whether they're going to release you quickly or give you a court date. And so all of that, the U.S. citizen birth certificates, letters from their children who are U.S. citizens, that can be used to get you some kind of prosecutorial discretion relief. Implementing that is important. And the analysis changes if it's a spouse, maybe a marriage certificate showing how long the marriage has been, and then pictures of the relationship showing that the relationship is real and it's not just for an immigrant benefit. And in the event of ICE detention, it's not just used to get you a quick release. So you really need to talk to an immigration lawyer about, okay, this is my mixed status family, and this is the strategy that we're going to implement should the worst happen in order to get the best possible result.
Yeah, doing a consultation to explain your situation, your family's specific situation, and seeing what the attorney says. And then you mentioned in the beginning having documents as well. And so, as a therapist, there's been many clients that have been bringing this up in therapy. And one of the most common things that a lot of families are doing is having conversations with all the children, kind of regardless of the age, and just telling them, like, here are the important documents and making sure that all the family information is there, contacts to the lawyer, contacts to other relatives, whether they're here in the States or not.
That's really good advice. And it's like, it's kind of like the very first step to have this conversation with your family about what do we do if something goes wrong. First step I would say is gather your documentation together and create it into a packet. Have everything organized, and then make sure that everybody who's any kind of position knows where this packet is. Scan the entire thing and then email it to yourself so that there's a digital copy at your Gmail that you can access. Make a clear subject line and then put everybody on that email thread. Have all the family and friends on that email thread. That way, if anything happens, everybody has access to that packet. Now, of course, you want to be sure that the person that receives this packet is a trusted individual, that they're not just some random strangers. But if this is your family and it's also a mixed status family that we were talking about before, then it makes sense for all of them to be on that email thread and have access to that one large, very well organized PDF of evidence that could be used to protect somebody. And then when the worst case scenario, it's very easy to just send that email to their attorney, and they can use that evidence to ask for prosecutorial discretion, to get a release or representation. And anyway, it's just incredibly useful if you have it already and if everybody knows where it is and it's all in the email.
I did make a checklist based off of some research I was doing back in February when this kind of started to this extent. And so you let us know if anything on here is incorrect or if we need to consult with someone else before having this in the folder. Family contacts, names, addresses, numbers, receipts, or anything you have received from immigration attorneys, proof that shows that you have lived in the United States for more than 2 years, lawyer's information. To get a lawyer to represent you, Form G28. If you have children, a minor power of attorney, copies of children's passports and birth certificates, and the application for stay of deportation or removal. That's Form I-246. What are your thoughts on this?
I would say all those forms are great and all that information is great. I would say a few of the things need a little bit of a nuance. So the G28 on its own, it won't work unless it's also signed by an attorney. So most attorneys won't begin representation until there's something that they can do. If somebody comes into my office and asks me to sign a G28, I can't do it unless unless they're already in removal proceedings or they have some kind of immigrant benefit that they're asking for. For the G28, it's really just about having the third page signed with an attorney in mind that you think will represent you, because having that signed already saves you a bit of time in a few days. The same thing for the I-246. You want that signed beforehand, and you can actually submit an I-246 stay of removal on your own without a lawyer if you can't find one, and it could potentially work. It has actually very little shot of working in these kind of situations, but that's what the form is for, and you can always submit it. The rest of the evidence, I would just say, make sure that you organize it properly. You want evidence that you've been there for the last 2 years. That will get you out of expedited removal. So if you can't prove that you've been here for 2 years, then they might think that you've been here for less than 2 years, and they might deport you very quickly. If you're in a foreign country that's very far away, say Guatemala, or let's say like Cameroon in Africa, then they have to wait to load up a plane. And that could be a good and a bad thing, because they might end up deporting you anyway, but at the very least, while they're waiting to fill up a plane, you have time to contact a lawyer for about a week, because that's usually how long it takes to fill up a plane, so that they make the most out of the flight. So you have some time to work with that. But if you're Mexican, you really need to do this fast, because if you're less than 2 years and you can't prove that you've been here longer than 2 years, it's very easy to deport somebody very quickly before they have a chance to do a consultation with a lawyer, before they have a chance to get the G28 signed by the lawyer. Especially if it's not pre-signed, that means that the lawyer has to actually get that signature. I have clients that I've been waiting 2 or 3 days to get signatures from them in the detention facilities, just because it takes a long time to schedule these things with ICE when they're detained. So it's a time saver, especially when you're in a situation where you can deport it quickly. So I think you can win over a lot of stuff, but it's like proof that you've been here for 2 years, the forms pre-signed with an attorney in mind, do some consultation, start a relationship with a lawyer that you know takes on removal defense cases, because you can go onto Google and look for immigration lawyer in your area, immigration lawyer Ventura County, and you will find a ton of immigration lawyers that don't do removal defense, that only do family petitions or only do employment-based, only do O1 visas. So you want a lawyer that does removal defense. And so find that lawyer, do at least a consultation with them so that there's a relationship established. That way, when they do get detained, the family could recontact that lawyer, sending emergency, or something like that. And at the very least, my meeting notes would say that I've already had a consultation with this person and I'll have some kind of case history. So it's more likely that I will take your case, as opposed to a brand new consultation with no evidence or anything, and I might not take the case, because I don't take cases unless I know the person, unless I know the situation. So you want to start looking for an immigration law that does removal defense. I think you also mentioned like the petitioning forms. That's also good. The approval notices, that means you might have a status already, and the receipt notices for any application that you submit to USCIS, because that's also proof of your residency, and it proves that you might have a benefit that might come up in the future. What you really want to do is really educate yourself on this stuff. Prepare a really good packet based on your situation, well organized.
And you mentioned to find a lawyer that does deportation cases, right?
Officially, it's called removal defense,
Removal,
but colloquially, deportation defense, or defense against deportation, which is what you're up against if you're in that situation.
which is an active deportation, right? Where
Yeah,
somebody is detained and they're waiting to be deported. And
yeah.
yeah, I have been learning that there are some immigration attorneys that do not take active cases once they are detained.
Oh, it's very important. A lot of them that don't. There's different areas of immigration law. There's like the family petitions where, somebody marries a U.S. citizen and they want to bring him over. That's very standard. They're in love and they need a family petition. The same thing for your children. It's like, I have this kid in a foreign country. I want to give him a consular report of birth abroad. They're basically, they prepare very strong cases to get these type of situations approved, to get your spouse or your fiance into the country. And they are immigration lawyers. They know immigration law. They know about the grounds of deportability. They want to make sure that in your a petition you're not exposing yourself to future deportation. But it's really about getting this immigrant benefit, and that's an area of immigration law. The other area of immigration law is employment law, employment immigration law, and that's when you work with an employer, you have a specialized set of skills, and you want to come in doing employment. And then there's removal defense attorneys. And that subset of attorneys are also immigration lawyers. They can do the other two pretty easily because, to be honest, removal defense is much harder than family petitions. It requires court knowledge. It requires knowledge of ICE procedures and detention facilities, border entry types. So it requires a different subset of knowledge because if you hire a removal defense attorney, it means you have a court date. It means that these benefits that you may or may not qualify for, they have not protected you from seeing an immigration judge, or they have not protected you from a quick 1 or 2 day removal or deportation. And so if you're in deportation removal, whether it's a fast deportation called expedited removal or a long deportation, which is full 240 immigration court judge robe proceedings, then that's deportation proceedings. And that needs somebody to defend you from that deportation. And that is a subset. It's court litigation, usually detention work in detention facilities. It's a different subset. All three are immigration lawyers: family, employment, removal defense. They're all immigration lawyers. I'm an immigration lawyer. I do all, except for employment. I do some employment, but not that much. But I do removal defense. And so that area, you need to find a lawyer that does that if you think you're subject to it. Now, if you have status, you're not subject to it. You don't need that type of lawyer. If you've been here, if you don't really think you're in danger of deportation at all, you don't need that type of lawyer at all. You can just keep your process going. But if you think that you have no status, if you're subject to deportation, then at least do a consult to see if you could benefit from a removal defense attorney.
Do any of these forms that I have on the checklist require them to be notarized?
No, they don't. In fact, most forms don't. G28 doesn't have to be notarized. 246 for stay of removal doesn't have to be notarized. Even the letters from family and friends establishing good moral character, they don't have to be notarized. You can, but USCIS has never asked for it, and neither has the immigration court. I would just recommend that if you're getting a letter or an affidavit of support or some kind of a good moral character letter from a family friend or a loved one, best practices are end it with, I declare under penalty of perjury that the following is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief, or the foregoing is true and correct to the best of knowledge and belief. It's just a statement at the end of a letter right before the signature line. And then also include an ID attached to that letter just to kind of add more weight to the letter. Notarization is optional, but it's never really been required in immigration law. It's required for other things. So as the attorney, I can't write or sign a letter for you. I guess unless we had like a very long-term relationship, like if it was a friend, then yeah, but I wouldn't be signing it off as their lawyer. I would be signing it off as their friend. If you're asking for an employment letter, like from your employer, they might include their company letterhead. They might include contact information, which is also very useful. But sometimes employers don't like to include their ID just for personal reasons. If that's the case, the letter's still good. It's still valid even without an ID. It just has a little bit of less weight when being analyzed by USCIS or ICE. If you can get it, great. But if you can't, don't let that deter you from submitting a letter. As long as it has that statement, it makes it even better. Again, even that statement that I mentioned, I declare under penalty of perjury statement, that isn't even required, but it helps. It makes the letter stronger. And it does have to be signed. It has to be dated and clearly identify what type of letter it is.
And this is something, if they have an immigration attorney, that the attorney will guide them
Yes,
on.
immigration law it's complex.
Yeah.
Even letter writing, it has its own like things that we do. So there are case decisions that have basically said that immigration law is the second most complicated area of law in the United States.
Hmm.
The first most complicated is tax law. It's very hard. I couldn't figure it out, and I don't do math, so it's like my dad wanted me to be a tax lawyer. But the second hardest is immigration, just because it's very nuanced, it's very complex, and it changes all the time.
That's right. Yeah. So we have a situation, and this is a very hypothetical situation, but I'm sure it's also real in some cases where individuals who are taking care of an elderly parent, let's say somebody that is a citizen and they themselves are undocumented, if the caregiver is deported and they have or detained and they have no one else to leave their children or the person they're caring for, what have your clients, what do people do in cases like that?
That's a very state specific question. So depending on your state, there'll be different options. Like in California, they have the caregiver affidavit. So you might want to look into that. But the real conversation you need to have is with two different types of lawyers. You need to have a conversation with an immigration lawyer to look at the immigration issues. And then you need to talk to a family lawyer who will look into the custody issues. So if somebody gets picked up by ICE in a mixed status family, and they're going to be detained for probably a day. So if this is a father or a mother and their kids are at school at the time and they get picked up by ICE, usually they're released, especially when there's kids involved. But if they aren't, then they're going to be detained for like a day of processing. No one's there to pick up the kid from school, or they're there for overnight. The kid doesn't know what's going on if there's no plan in place. And again, these are state specific questions, but what these affidavits do is they give authority to somebody to take care of the child and make certain decisions. Somebody to pick up the kid at school, someone to feed the kid, to make sure that they have any medical decisions while the person is detained. And if the detention is long term, if it's not just like a day or two of processing, if it becomes a long term detention for the parent, then the detention can last for months and the kid will be all alone. So you want to make sure that kid's taken care of. So you need to talk to an immigration lawyer in your state that can advise on the immigration concerns and also the family concerns and even the estate planning concerns. So another issue happens when there's finances involved and you actually end up deported and your kid wants to remain in the United States. Who takes care of the finances in that situation? What happens to your bank account in the United States? What happens to your property in the United States? What if you have a house in the United States? What happens to that? So there's all these decisions on like who can make these decisions. And these are powers of attorney, custody powers of attorney, probate law. And it's a complete different area of law that is related to immigration, but it has its own subset. So I would say you need an immigration lawyer to discuss the immigration issues, you need a family lawyer to discuss the family issues, and you need an estate planning attorney to discuss the financial issues. And acting in concert, that you come up with the best possible game plan for your situation. Now, if you can't afford any of that, because a lot of people can't, like an estate planning attorney and a whole team of attorneys to decide what these issues are, at the very least, look into something to take a custody affidavit for your child. Just a simple custody affidavit of your child. California has them. Just get some family and friends to sign off on it, just so for temporarily the kid is taken care of. It's very easy to find these forms online. It's very easy to find the requirements online. You can't really mess them up. As long as I would say get the witnesses that sign off on them to be US citizens, just because it makes it stronger. Every state's going to be different as to whether they have to be or don't have to be US citizens, but I would say best practice is to go with that. Get them notarized, just because it's also another best practice. And it's a very simple form, usually, even in California. At the very least, also get a consultation with a family attorney to take a look at it and make sure that everything's checked all the boxes in case it's ever contested in the future. But do that for the kid at the very least, and then worry about the financials if you have the money to fire estate planners and everything in the event that the worst happens.
Affidavits, is that the same thing as power of attorneys?
Yeah. So there's two different types. There's custody affidavits, and then there's powers of attorney or custody power of attorneys. They both kind of serve different purposes and for different lengths of time, but you really need to like go into your state and try to figure out what actually works for that state. So definitely hire a lawyer if you're kind of confused on it. But in California, there's like the custody affidavit, authorization affidavit, the custody authorization affidavit, and then there's the other one with the power of attorney or custody power of attorney. So either one of them serves kind of like different purposes, kind of joint purposes. And then in California, there's all sorts of laws for it. So you really want to kind of like make sure that you're doing the right thing, and then getting like, the attorney consult just to make sure that everything is checked off correctly.
Thank you, Pedro, for that information. And as we are winding down, we want to know if there are any legal aid organizations or free services that you recommend. I do want to mention before you provide that answer that we have gathered a few resources under latinxtherapy.com/legal. Would love to know if there are any others that you know of, likely in California or nationwide.
If you're in Ventura County, Catholic Charities Ventura is trying to help me start like a little bit of an immigration clinic there every Tuesday. If you're in the area on Tuesdays, show up at Catholic Charities Ventura 9 to 4. I'll be there and I'll provide free consultations. Usually I charge for consultations, but if you show up on Tuesdays, you get the consultation for free and I can evaluate your case. At the very least, do it so that you can get an idea of what options you have, what your specific situation is. It's there in Ventura County. Now, anywhere else, I would recommend going through the EOIR pro bono list. So the Executive Office of Immigration Review, it's the judicial branch for immigration. So that's where the court system for immigration. By law, they have to maintain a list of all the free legal services providers so that they can hand this to people that are in deportation. So if you type in Google EUIR pro bono list and then click on the first result, you'll be sent to a PDF where it has all of the free legal service providers nationwide. So once you're in that PDF, search for your state and search for the area within your state. See a full list of every free legal service provider in that area that offers removal defense. They have staff attorneys that can represent you for free. And so start there, try to look and start early because there is a lot of demand for free legal services and it's a very large demand for free attorney representation. So it makes sense to start now before you're in removal proceedings just to see if the program is still active, if they still have funding to represent you. So just start the search there. And it's nationwide. And that's a really good resource. The government has to provide it, but nobody really knows about it. And so look through there, call the numbers on that list, and schedule appointments, see if you can find a free lawyer.
We did find that list. I'll include it in the show notes as well. And Pedro, can you share where people can find more about you and what you're up to?
If you feel follow me on social media at Hola Pedro Chavez in Spanish or at Hello Pedro Chavez in English. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And also my website is pedrochavezimmigration.com. So if you like a consultation or something, or just to see how my practice is doing, you can check me out on that website.
Thank you so much for your time. Community, we're going to have this segment also in Spanish. Please be sure to follow Pedro. He has really important information that he shares on his channels. And thank you once again, Pedro.